Welcome back to Gentle Calm. Many people move through life with a quiet feeling that something is slightly unsettled. Nothing is dramatically wrong. From the outside, things may even look stable. You might be working, managing responsibilities, improving certain areas of your life. You may be making progress in ways that others can see, and yet, internally, something feels uncertain. Plans shift more often than you expected. Your direction occasionally feels unclear. Even when you are productive, the sense of steadiness you hope for never fully arrives. So you begin searching for ways to stabilize things. You refine your habits. You reorganize your time. You look for better systems. You set clearer goals. All of those efforts make sense. In many ways, they are responsible steps toward improvement. But sometimes the instability people feel does not come from a lack of discipline or structure. Sometimes it comes from something far less obvious. It comes from the fact that many people are building their lives without clearly defining what their life actually rests on. They are strengthening the outer layers of their life without establishing a stable center beneath them. And when the center is unclear, everything above it requires constant adjustment. Think about how many decisions you make in a typical week. You decide whether today is the day you stay consistent with your health. You decide whether to protect your time or stretch yourself a little further. You decide how seriously to take your priorities depending on how motivated you feel. None of these decisions are inherently wrong, but they reveal something important. For many people, their standards change depending on the situation they are in. When energy is high, discipline appears. When motivation fades, standards quietly soften. When life becomes busy, the things that once felt important are pushed aside. This pattern is extremely common. It is also deeply exhausting. Because when your standards are not clearly anchored, you end up renegotiating who you are throughout the day. You decide again whether your health matters. You reconsider whether your time deserves protection. You debate whether your commitments still apply when circumstances change. Every one of those decisions requires mental energy. Over time, that constant renegotiation creates an invisible strain. Life begins to feel mentally crowded, even when nothing dramatic is happening. Many people assume this mental pressure is caused by stress, but often it comes from something quieter. It comes from living without a defined center. When you do not have a clearly established center, every situation forces you to decide how you will respond. Every new pressure invites you to reconsider your direction. Every opportunity tempts you to shift your priorities. Without a stable reference point, your life becomes guided primarily by circumstances. You respond to whatever feels most urgent. You adjust according to whatever appears most demanding. You move toward whatever seems most rewarding in the moment. There is a name for this pattern. You could call it situational living. Situational living means your behavior is largely shaped by what is happening around you rather than by principles that already exist within you. Your standards move depending on the environment. Your priorities adjust depending on the moment. Your identity subtly shifts depending on the pressure you are under. At first, this flexibility can feel adaptive. You become responsive, you adapt quickly, you adjust to new conditions. But over time, constant adjustment begins to erode something important: your sense of internal stability. When your behavior changes with every situation, your identity begins to feel fluid in ways that are not always healthy. You become disciplined when motivation is strong, patient when life feels calm, focused when the environment supports it. But when those conditions disappear, those qualities often disappear with them. The result is a life that feels constantly managed but rarely anchored. You are always adjusting, always recalibrating, always responding, but rarely standing on something solid. This is one of the hidden reasons progress can feel fragile even when you are doing many things right. You might be improving your routines. You might be developing better habits. You might be learning new ways to manage your time. And yet, something still feels unsettled. That feeling often appears when the outer structure of life is improving faster than the inner foundation. Imagine building a structure on ground that shifts slightly every week. You can still construct something impressive. You can add new layers. You can reinforce certain sections. But if the ground itself keeps moving, the structure above it will always require constant correction. Your attention remains focused on keeping things balanced rather than allowing them to grow naturally. This is the experience many people quietly carry. They are not failing. They are not irresponsible. They are simply trying to build stability without first defining what their life stands on. A stable life does not come from perfect habits. It comes from clear principles. Habits shape behavior. Principles shape identity. Habits help you manage your actions. Principles determine why those actions matter in the first place. Without principles, habits often collapse when circumstances change. Without principles, discipline becomes dependent on motivation. Without principles, progress becomes vulnerable to pressure. Principles change something fundamental about how you move through life. They simplify decisions. When you know which values outrank convenience, you stop debating certain choices. When you know what standards guide your life, you stop renegotiating them every time the environment changes. When you know what truly matters to you, external pressure loses some of its influence. This does not make life easier, but it makes life clearer. Clarity removes a surprising amount of internal tension. When your actions align with principles you have consciously chosen, your life begins to feel more coherent. You are no longer reacting to every situation. You are responding from a place that already exists within you. Many people search for calm by trying to eliminate stress. But calm often emerges from something different. It emerges from internal alignment. Alignment means your behavior reflects what you actually believe matters. When those two things match, life begins to feel steadier. When they do not match, internal tension grows. You may appear successful on the outside, but inside, something continues to feel unsettled. This is why constant optimization can sometimes make life feel more chaotic rather than less. You become very skilled at managing activity, but activity without anchoring eventually becomes overwhelming. The real shift occurs when you pause long enough to ask a quieter question. What in your life is not negotiable? Not what you hope to achieve, not what you would like to improve, not what you intend to work towards someday. What remains steady even when circumstances change? What standards remain intact when motivation disappears? What values guide your behavior when pressure increases? These questions are uncomfortable because they require clarity. Clarity forces you to choose. When you define what matters most, you also define what will sometimes need to be declined. You accept that certain opportunities will not align with the life you are building. You accept that certain expectations from others may need to be reconsidered. But once those choices are made, something important begins to happen. Your mind becomes quieter, not because life suddenly becomes simple, but because you are no longer arguing with yourself about the same decisions every day. You are no longer redefining your identity every time circumstances shift. Instead, your behavior begins to orbit around principles you have already chosen. That orbit creates coherence, and coherence creates steadiness. Steadiness does not mean your life becomes predictable. Unexpected events will still occur, challenges will still arise, plans will still change. But your internal direction remains intact while those changes unfold. That is what gives certain people a sense of calm even during demanding periods. Their life is not free from difficulty, but their identity is not dependent on circumstances. They know what they stand on. And that knowledge creates stability that does not disappear when conditions become difficult. If your life currently feels like it requires constant adjustment, it may not be because you need more discipline. It may be because something deeper has never been clearly defined. Before searching for another system, another routine, or another strategy for improvement, consider asking yourself a simpler question. What does my life actually stand on? Take time to think about that honestly. Write it down. Return to it when decisions feel complicated. Allow it to guide your actions when circumstances try to pull you in different directions. You may notice something surprising begin to happen. The quiet instability that once followed you begins to fade. Not because life becomes easier, but because you are no longer drifting between situations. You are moving from a place that is grounded. And when your life is grounded, growth no longer feels fragile. It feels steady. If this conversation resonated with you, consider subscribing to the channel. Gentle Calm is built for people who are not looking for quick bursts of motivation, but for clarity that holds up over time. If this gave you something valuable to reflect on, take a moment to like the video. That small signal helps this kind of grounded conversation reach others who may also be searching for a more stable way to live. If you would like to go deeper into these ideas, the Gentle Calm book series explores this progression in detail, from quieting mental noise to building internal order to developing a durable personal framework for life. The Gentle Calm Daily Reset Journal is designed to help reinforce these principles through a simple daily reflection practice. And on Substack, I share slower, more thoughtful essays that expand on these ideas each week. All of those resources are linked below. Thank you for being here. And as always, stay calm.